here's how to get a secret weapon in brookhaven. Wait a second. Here is...
He got here. He got here. He got there. There's no air there.
Okay.
He got here in the front.
Okay.
How can you beat there?
Here's how to get a secret weapon in brookhaven. So basically, you need to go over here. Oh, okay.
I think I eat something bad.
Oh, okay. So all you need here is to press all of these together like this.
So sunlight was crucially important in castles and dark places, even during the day. So the servants had to capitalize on every second of sunlight just to get
I'm recording ba?
Even if you didn't work in a castle, unless you were wealthy, odds are you worked as a
Okay.
merchant or a craftsman or laborer. So you had to be up at the crack of dawn if you expected to make any money. Contrary to popular belief, people liked taking baths in medieval times as much as they do today. It's just that clean water was hard to come by, especially for the
This is
lower
a dual
classes.
weapon,
I really
actually.
can't stress how important plumbing is. The tub itself was a cartoonishly giant wooden bucket that could be carried from room to room in the castle for people to bathe in. It didn't approach the definition of either hygienic or private, but at least you got to scrub off some of that castle funk. Castles were essentially giant basements with nothing in the way of insulation. They were designed primarily as fortresses rather than dwellings, so everything was made of cold stone. And what few windows there were didn't let in much sun. The lords and ladies would have the nicer rooms with fireplaces and windows. The servants' quarters were often located in the lower interior of the castles, frigid, lightless warrens that were breeding grounds for diseases that thrive in the damp cold. At that point, I think I'd rather sleep
You
outside.
can only do a dual, I guess.
There was always something going on in a castle, whether celebrating some festival or holiday or entertaining a visiting noble family. So consequently, huge extravagant meals were the norm rather than the exception. If you're one of the cooks, you got to spend all day preparing the feast and then have your own meager meal in the kitchen. Meanwhile, the lords and
That's a
ladies
dual
of the
weapon,
house would entertain their guests at a long wooden meal
basically.
table with people seated according to their importance. The important people would be seated at the head of the table, while the servants would be tucked
Need to be
all
like-
the way in the back, out of sight. Because nothing ruins a meal like having to look at poor people. It's like going to the Waffle House after your wedding, but sad. Meals were taken in the great hall of the castle, and as we mentioned, you were seated in the hall according to your status. But your status didn't only affect where you got to sit, it also determined what you got to eat. The lord and lady and their family and guests would be served with
Wow.
exotic
Look at
spices.
this. I'm
relish,
pressing
and
all
meats.
three
If you were a
buttons.
servant, however, you had to watch them eat this food while tucking in some stew or a meat pie at the dim end of the table.
Whoop,
But hey,
beep,
it could be worse. At least you're eating. More than 85% of the town's residents were considered peasants and weren't allowed inside the castle. So even though they were working in the land, the lord or lady, it was up to them to feed
Oh
themselves.
my god, guys. Look at this. Woohoo! Okay, guys. That's it for this video. And goodbye.
Difficult decisions.